Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We'll be starting in just a moment, letting you get your seats and get ready to start the class.
Should we let people know again about the handout in case people don't have it?
Yes, I am just getting that going. Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Jack, you can turn your video on. We're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome.
Really happy to have all of you with us. Thank you for being here, folks.
Yes, welcome. Well, let's get going, Jack. While people are getting their seats, I'm going to get us started. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Learn to Draw Insects with John Muir Laws. And we're so glad you're joining us today. My name is Roseanne Hansen, and I am one of the co-founders of the Wild Wonder Foundation, which is hosting this class today. The foundation is dedicated to encouraging nature connection and conservation through attention, curiosity, art, science, and community. We strive to make nature and nature journaling accessible to everyone by sponsoring the annual Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference and lots of other events, educational workshops, field trips, teacher trainings, retreats, exhibits, grants, and many other activities in support of our mission, like this class today. You can learn more about our work at wildwonder.org. And we are so grateful to our teacher today, John Muir Laws, who is an award-winning author, writer, illustrator, and has nearly 4 decades of teaching experience. He's the co-founder and president of the Wild Wonder Foundation and the author and illustrator of the Laws Guide to Nature Drawing and Journaling, and the Laws Guide to Drawing Birds, and the wonderful Laws Sketchbook. Jack is donating his time today to teach this class, and all funds raised will support the new Wild Wonder online community platform, which we are so excited about. It will debut later this year, and it's going to be an amazing place, a new, creative, joyful, supportive, and free online home far away from the spam and ads of social media. And it's just for nature journalers all over the world.
A clean, well-lighted place for nature journaling.
Yes. And quick little housekeeping. The class will be recorded and you will receive an email with the link to the recording within about a week. And a special shout out to Evia, our behind the scenes backstage moderators, and she'll be helping us stay on track and answering questions. Speaking of which, use the Q&A for questions, and the chat's been disabled. We'll do a quick break in an hour, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. So be sure to share your class notes and drawings on socials using hashtag Wild Wonder Foundation and tag us at Wild Wonder Foundation as well. All right, I'm going to step aside and Jack, take it from here.
Oh, and thank you, Roseanne, for your help in wrangling this workshop. Also, Beth Galoglu behind the scenes, all the folks who are helping make this happen. And if you would like to get involved in this nature journaling community, we want to invite you to be a part of it. We're having a lot of fun. We're being makers and getting to share inspiration and all sorts of ideas and resources and things. It's a movement, and we'd love for you to be a part of that. So you can find us at wildwonder.org, and there we'll find things like this and more crazy things to boost your connection with the natural world and your creativity and fun. It's going to be a good place to find community. The world needs this right now. Today, I want to talk about bugs and drawing all the sort of insects and arthropods that you find. It is so bugs are really cool. So the reason we're doing this is because insects are mind-blowing, amazing in their diversity. They've got all these kind of crazy shapes that are a delight to explore. Scientifically, the group is fascinating. As you kind of, the more you kind of get under the hood and start of looking at things, just the more interesting it gets. Um, as the as poet, philosopher, nature journaler, musician, awesome, curious person, Fiona Galogly once said, sort of like the more interested you are, the more interesting the world becomes. And this is one of these things where you start to geek out on insects a little bit. Right? It's just like this world of wonders opens up in front of you. And the neat thing about insects is it is such a successful group that bugs are everywhere. You can find insects all over the place. And when you go to a new area, you'll find new kinds of bugs there. And you can find some just on your windowsill. They will come to you. And this is really cool. So a few resources for helping us draw insects. A couple of things that I find really, really useful. So first is just mindset. You want to have bug mind. And what bug mind is that you're just aware that like bugs are. And so rather than just like birds, where are the birds? Where are the birds? Where are the birds? But you want to like, oh, look at that. Right? This thing is right in front of you. So you want to start looking for insects. And when an insect shows up, instead of like, right? We want to kind of turn our into ooh, right? Every time you find an insect, it's a ooh potential. And the more we intentionally do that, the more kind of a kind of low brain stem, like, ooh, it's got legs thing that goes on in our brains turns into like, ooh, it's got legs, right? And so with your curiosity, you can change the way you frame these things. So if you're somebody where they feel like kind of creepy and buggy, you can change that to like beautiful and buggy just by kind of leaning into it a little bit more. And this whole world of wonder is going to open up in front of you. A tool that I love for kind of helping me look at insects is a pair of close focus binoculars. These are Pentax Papilio binoculars. They these are the 8-power ones. These take what is close to you and make it even closer. Now we're used to this with birds. There's some birds. They're mourning doves. Having a little break in the rainstorm that's coming through the Bay Area here. And I know everybody knows we look at the birds with binoculars, but looking at bugs and butterflies. See, the cool thing is I'm looking at a computer screen right now. And the computer screen is about this far away from my nose. If with these binoculars, these are close focus binoculars, I'm going to focus them up close. All right, I am now seeing the red, green, and blue dots in the grid of my computer screen, right? So these are focusing on something that is basically a half a meter away from my nose. And what that does is it makes insects into insects. And it turns out that insects are easier to draw than insects. So a pair of close focus binoculars are really cool because like you can do things like if there's the little butterfly over there, you get your binoculars on the butterfly, all of a sudden you can see its tongue unrolling and going down into the flower. You can see like the bee's mouth parts working, doing whatever you're doing. If we just put them in jars and then look at them, they're like, oh, I'm in a jar, right? And so you have the behavior of an insect in a jar. But when you're looking at them through the binoculars, they're doing their butterfly thing. And so then you get to watch their behaviors. Behavior is one of the things that I love to observe with insects. So this first kind of got on my radar when I was a kid. I got a field guide by Donald and Lillian Stokes. They had these Stokes guides to all sorts of different things, and they had a couple of ones that were on insects. And what it was is that all my other books had been looking at like um, here is how you identify all these things, but the Stokes were looking at the behavior of bugs. And maybe during the break, I'll find it on my shelf and I'll pull this out for you just because it's brilliant. And what you realize is like they're constantly doing all these cool little bug things. And we can kind of parse those out and figure out what's going on by our direct observation. So looking at insect behavior, so much fun. Um, and but even if I find a dead bug on the windowsill, the structures of these things are elegant and interesting. So insects tend to wear their equipment on the outside. There are all these parts of insects. You'll find insects with these weird body shapes, and those body shapes have a function that's going on. And so you're like, what might you eat? And it will go like, look, I have this mouth that does this, right? Like, oh, you have a straw for a face. You must suck. Not that way, right? And the so you can figure out a lot by looking with insects. And that also makes it really fun. Maybe to get started, I'm just going to pull out a few of my journals, and I've flagged a few pages that have some bug pages on them. And I'll show you kind of, and we'll do this a few times during this workshop just to kind of make you think like, oh yeah, this is something where you don't have to just be like, I want a large photograph and I'm going to try to copy that. But you can be out there in the field with little bugs running around doing their bug things, and get your bug journal on. So let's take a look. Whip at a nature journal. All right, so here's a nature journal. All right, this is not an insect, right, but it's an arthropod, and was up. I had jet lag in Rwanda, and I was sitting up at 3 a.m. and I saw this little thing go scuttling across the floor of my room. And I thought, like, oh, what's that? And oh, if only I had a black light, because these things fluoresce. Um, but so I just wanted to point out kind of a few things going on. So one is here, I'm mostly looking at structure. I'm kind of curious, like, what is the structure of this thing? So I've done a drawing of it, putting in the measurements. And a couple things I want to point out on this. If you see this little box here, that's sort of what the cross section of the body looks like here. So that I can look at this and kind of go like, oh, this is dorsoventrally flattened. And these little segments here, they're more square. So see, I'm drawing little cross sections. Here's an enlargement. We'll kind of be talking a lot about this, finding some part and zooming in on the zoom in, and allows you to kind of look at some of these structures better. Doing enlargement is a great way to get our brains to start thinking structurally. And then here's a little bit of behavior. This is its posture when it is in active scuttle mode. And then it stopped, and its little arms go back to this position. Right, and then it runs with the arms out and like stops like that. Like, so notice how just with a few little kind of scorpion cartoons, I can get a little bit of behavior. So here's some structure. Here is some doing the enlargement strategy. And then here's a little bit about the behavior of this. And maybe it makes you think about, like, maybe you can come up with some ideas. What might a reason why, when you're being really active and running, these arms are forward? Why, when you're resting, might they be back? What could be going on with that? When you're guessing about these sort of things, by the way, folks, you don't have to be right. Right? What you want to do is you want to think of this in terms of like, could it be? So as we're kind of coming up with our possible explanations, like, I wonder if that's to do this. And that keeps our brain open and not getting tunnel vision on the first kind of reasonable possible explanation that we get. Making the small big is a great strategy for our nature journals. So this is 21 millimeters here. I have drawn it larger than life, and that allows me to get a bunch of the features on it. You can see more on an insect than you'll be able to draw as you're drawing at life size. So that's why an enlargement really helps. But when we're doing that, kind of coming up with a way of also recording what is the size and the scale of these things is a really great strategy. So here I just drew a little line here and said that this is 21 millimeters. Over on this one, notice this is interesting. Notice how these have different patterns on their backs. you can, my friend, nature journaler, Akshay and Gargi have a bunch of little insects in their little terrarium, and they've been able to identify them all by the patterns on the back. So you can actually get down to the individual level. But on this one, I'm showing scale, I'm showing size. This line is the actual size of this. I should probably write actual size next to that. ACT. Right? So there's a little actual size of that little beastie. Oh, that's fun. So some behavioral notes in there. And this was interesting. Sometimes, because I've studied bugs for a while, I'll look at an insect and go like, oh, I know what you are. But then I found this weird thing. The structure of this was so strange. And as the more I looked at it, the more, just the weirder it got. It had this weird long head. It had these big flanges of wing covers that stick out that have this little hook in them. It was just this weird looking little insect. And so I wanted to show you just a few things that I'm doing here. Normally, when we think about like drawing an insect, you just think of kind of getting like, here's my bug. But I'm doing a few things I want to point out here. One is I've circled the little foot here, and I've got a number 5 there. I have a number 4 here. I have a number 5 here. What I'm doing is, it turns out that one tool you have in your pocket to help you be able to identify insects is the number of little segments on their foot. So I'm actually counting those segments. So counting is a good thing to do on insects. This has 4 in the front and a 5 and a 5. So counting how many antennal segments. They're big enough, you can actually do these things. This is an enlargement of the tip of the antenna. This is an enlargement of the base of the antenna. And this is kind of fun, is a diagram of one of these wing covers. And notice I have A and A prime here. Then I have A and A prime here. What I'm imagining is, if I drew a line across this is that cross section. So this, as you went across it, it kind of went sort of scooped up, down a slope, and then had this curved part all the way down. So how do I show that in here? Nah, it was hard to do. So I just have a little cross section of here. So I'm trying to get creative with how to show information about this little beastie. And finally, here's a behavior moment. I had a little jar, caught a praying mantis, put it in that, left to go make lunch. When I came back, it had created an egg sac, an ootheca, in the jar. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? Well, I then just started, I watched it every day, and I was able to find out how long it took the eggs to hatch. So it took, here's my math, 23 days. 23 days from laying to hatching. And when they hatched, these little out of the eggs would come this weird worm-like thing, and it would wiggle back and forth. And it took about 2 minutes to get there. And then you could sort of see that its legs were coming out. And then at 5 minutes, its legs would go pating as it popped out of this egg. And it started off as this little, now it looks like a mantis. And but it's really pale. And then it turns darker by a little bit later. So last night, the first was seen. This morning, there are 15 of them are out. Got to see 3 of them emerge. And then I put the jar outside in the little flower garden, and so that all the little ones who could emerge wouldn't just sort of hang out there and eat each other. They would go out and kind of romp around in the garden and do praying mantis things. So this is like, these little opportunities are available to us. These were small, so the close focus binoculars were great in that. And So those are just a few examples of, actually, let's do one more example of kind of live insect sketching. I'll show you a few others later. Let's see, what about these? Aw, bees. Let's back up on this page. This was during a heat wave in California, and it was this really, really hot day. And so these bees were, the place where I was staying, there was a little sort of fake waterfall. And all the bees were coming and licking water off the rocks on the bottom. And you can actually, with the close focus binoculars, you could see their tongues sticking out. So here's from the front and the side view of the head. So you see I'm using that that enlargement trick again. I've got a side view here, and these are about life-size honeybees here, but I've sort of showing the side view of the rock and showing kind of a bunch of them were clustered together. And others were kind of doing things on their own, but some would be in these little sort of bee clusters. So that was fun. Here's what it reminds me of. There are these birds called sand grouse that will go soak their feathers in water and bring them back home. These would like suck up water and then zip off. I was wondering, like, are they, what are they getting their water for? And this little rock with all these bees coming in, getting water and going out, bees coming in, getting water, going out. That was my busy airport. So those are it reminds me of. And let's just take a look at one more. This was finding an ant mound at a crack in some asphalt with a bunch of seeds around it, but no ants. And then I thought, well, when are the ants out? So then what I did is I started to just go check throughout the day. I would go check, and the sun set, no ants. And then I grabbed my flashlight and I started to go out, and um, my little ant friends were, so here's a little chart. So during the day, no ants, no ants, no ants, no ants, no ants, no ants, right? Sunsets, no ants. And then at 9 p.m., this is a kind of, the thickness of this shows the amount of ant activity. The ants start coming out, and they're streaming out in these big trails and coming back with sticks. So they look like they're in a little protest march, right? Kind of going along in their ant movement. And so lovely little things. And this went on all night. I'm sleepy, right? And next morning by 6 a.m., it died down. And as the sun came up, no more ants. And I didn't get the time of the last one because right in here, I fell asleep. When I woke up, no ants. This is an enlargement of one of the soldiers. This is an enlargement of one of the workers. So I'm getting the casts. Notice on these ones, what am I not drawing? I'm not drawing the legs. I was interested in the body shape. So just whatever I'm interested in, that's what I draw. So I'm sometimes doing things more of a diagram. Here a diagram of time. Here's a little map showing these little lines of ants going out, and a little close-up of ants holding their little protest flags. That's fun. So those are a couple of examples of.
Oh, Jack, do we
Yes.
have a moment for questions?
Yes.
Okay, a couple of quick questions. Earlier on, when you had done that praying mantis study, was there anything that you had put into the jar with it at all?
So the jar had a lid that was off, so oxygen could easily get in. I didn't have anything in there to eat because it was an egg case. And then once they started emerging, what I did is I left the jar out. So little babies, they were able to walk up the side of my jar and out of the and out of it. So it wasn't a little praying mantis prison. Something that I like to do in my sort of critter nature study. I remember when I was in college, I took an entomology course. And if you get a chance to do something like that, jump on it. It's so cool. But one of the things they wanted me to do was they had like, here's your kill jar, get the insect, gas it, put a pin in its back, put it in the case. And these sorts of collections are really, really useful. They allow us to understand the biodiversity of places. And I understand why my teacher wanted me to do it, because then you learn how to do this, how to properly pin it. And I did it for a few. And I had this, it wasn't feeling right. And then there was this big old bumblebee. And it was a carpenter bee. So it was one of these beautiful iridescent body. And oh, I got it. And first like, oh, you're in my collection. And I put it in my kill jar and it went, and it stopped. And I left it in a little while longer. And then I pinned it. And then the next day I heard in my room. I was looking around, what is that? And I opened up my little insect case, and my little bumblebee with a little label neatly written on it with a pin through its body was still alive with a pin through it. And it was just it was just sort of spinning around like on the pin. And I realized I can't do this anymore. And I talked to all my teachers, and they were like, I don't know how you're going to do this. I said, I'm going to draw them. And they said, that will take you longer. I said, I'm going to draw them. And so for the rest of my thing, I turned in my classmates would catch, kill. I would catch, sketch, and release. So things that I didn't have the close focus binoculars at that time. I had little jars with a magnifying glass set in the top of them, and so that allowed me to magnify my critter. But I want to say again, there is a real use to well-curated scientific collections of the beasties. And because we have those, we are able to, record, the decline of, say, the Xerxes blues and all these other sorts of things. And we know what was here and what is here. So these sorts of biodiversity studies, they absolutely have our place. And I have full respect of scientists who do kill insects in the process of their work. I don't need to do that. So I don't do that. And what you want to do is for yourself, think of like where do you sit on it? There's no, for me, I can't. Other people, you feel comfortable doing that. And so what you want to do is just to decide for yourself sort of where on that, where you land on that. And that might change over time. For me, seeing that big, beautiful iridescent green bumblebee just doing a spin inside my case, and also as it did, it like knocked all the legs off all the insects around it. I couldn't do that anymore. But still, these collections have a real use. So you want to think about it, and we don't want to just be on. I think if you're intentional about it, that's what I would ask people to do is to be intentional about it. Am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And if I'm not doing this, why am I not doing this? Let's think about it. Did that kind of address what was behind that question? I think that question might have been like what are you feeding the mantises and things. For me, I like to kind of I want to try to take care of the beasties that I study. I've even gotten to the point now when I sit down in the grass and I draw some flowers or things, when I get up, I fluff up the grass where I was. I know I still have an impact on this natural world around me. I know my footprint is not neutral. But I do try to be, try to minimize that, and I try to treat nature with a respect that I feel it deserves from my experience of being in nature. Was there another question, or did I address what was kind of on in there?
Yes, you addressed, I think, what was behind that question. So thank you. That was all the questions.
Okay, great. If you have other questions, please drop them into the chat. We may do some questions at the end. And if Avea sees like this one, like we ought to just throw this into the conversation right now, we absolutely will. Sometimes questions sort of in context as we're going. That's helpful. But you came here to draw insects, and we haven't drawn any insects yet. Let's draw some insects. So I am going to, oh, I need to run across my room. I am going to, we're first going to look at a few sort of general strategies of drawing insects. Some things, ideas that I think are important for us to think about. We're going to look at some structure. We're then going to be looking at some real insects. We're going to look at some different insect groups. I'm going to look at, part of this is going to be like insect anatomy and things which we want to understand. Part of it is going to be some drawing tricks. Like if you make the line this way, it looks really cool. And so we're going to be mixing a bunch of those things in, but we want to start with some understanding of, you know, the arm bones connected to the shoulder bone for the insects. And then we will, so let's look at sort of a generic insect model. And also we're going to deal with a little bit of misconception about that. That sometimes the way we think things should be can change the way we draw, because we start drawing what should be instead of actually looking at the thing. The answer is always in the thing. So let's go there now. I've got a piece of paper here, and I have and I have, move my pencils right over here. I'm going to start with thinking about a very simplified insect form here. Let's imagine, if you will, that your insect is just an oval blob. And I look at it from the top. Something that I see is that the insect has two sides. And insects are what we call bilaterally symmetrical. So this side tends to look like this side. So this little sort of this line of axis is a very helpful thing to put in on my insect drawings, whether I'm drawing it from the top, or if I am, imagine sort of let's say I'm looking at this thing sort of 3/4 view towards me. That little line that is going over the middle of my critter is a very useful line for me to put in on my beastie. Now let's think of the structure of the body. We've all learned in school that the insect has 3 body segments, 2 for spiders, and 3 for insects. So there's a little head at the front, and you can think of the head as sort of it's your executive branch. It's doing the thinking for your little insect. And then there is another segment on the body. We call that the thorax. And the thorax is essentially your department of transportation. Attached to your thorax are wings. Attached to the thorax are legs. And so it's where those will be attached. Let's, up here in our executive branch, let's put in a few of the features on that, right? And if we're doing that here, I'm going to draw a few little parallel lines across that center line. And then I'm going to have my head here. Here's my little thorax. And again, the thorax is the department of transportation, and the abdomen, the part on the back, that's your Department of Public Works. That's where all your respiratory system is, your reproductive system, your digestive system. The guts of the little critter are in there. And the on these are sometimes broken up into, these can be segmented. So I'll throw some segments in on our little imaginary critter here. But that's a good way to sort of start thinking about an insect. The two views that I usually do, that I find really helpful, you can do a top view, and top views are really easy to do. They're easy for our brain to wrap around. And if you're doing that, getting that center line is very helpful. At the start of any drawing, get your little center line, and then just think of, like, if my critter is this big, how wide is it? If you get too into like drawing details of heads right off the bat, then what happens is you're not going to get the thickness, the length of the body. So actually think of your insect at the start as kind of, what is the blob of this body? How thick is it? How wide is it? The whole head, thorax, abdomen, all thinking of that as a unit together. And you get that general shape. Then you can break that into, different parts that, and kind of get your drawing on from there. But first you want to sort of establish that the big proportions this way and this way on your little critter. Now, let's take a look at where this understanding of things can get us into trouble. So if, for instance, I know that the head and the wings attach to the thorax, then a lot of us get really confused when we look at something like a beetle. Say I've got a little beetle right here. By the way, I'm going to suggest that as we're doing this at home, you draw along with us so that we're all making a lot of little sketches of insects. So if that's my head, that's my thorax. What's weird is that down here on the abdomen, that's where I see these big wing covers. So what is transportation doing on the abdomen? Well, it turns out that they're attaching up here on the thorax, and then they flop down over the abdomen. So if you're looking at, say, a little wasp or something that has a thorax and an abdomen.
Oh, Jack, would you mind scooching? Perfect, thank you.
Your wings are attached here. They then stick out over your abdomen, right? But you're attaching them in there. Your legs also attach here on the thorax. And what I'm going to do here on this is I'm going to draw in sort of some legs on, we're going to take a look at sort of the generic leg of an insect, and then we are going to attach those onto our wasp friend here. And then we'll take a look at how that happens on, say, a bug or a beetle, because there's a thing that happens that really confuses a lot of people. So here's the structure of the of the leg. There is, on a human leg, sort of the connection between your, well, let's actually draw a human leg here. Here is part of your pelvis. And the place where the leg bone attaches onto the pelvis is called the coxa. And then we have a little bump on our leg bone that sticks down. All right, here's our leg bone. The leg bone is your femur. Here's your little kneecap.
Sorry, Jack, could you?
Ooh.
Perfect, thank
This
you.
little bump here, that's your coxa. You've got one. You've got a bump here on your leg bone. If you sort of feel in on your hips, you can feel this little bump sticking out. That's your trochanter. Not sure about my spelling. This is your femur. And then on human legs, we have two bones that are down here. Your tibia and your fibula. And so we've got, on human beings, your tibia and fibula. And then you have your foot. Got a bunch of little tiny bones in here.
Sorry, Jack, a little bit up more, please.
The
There we
long
go.
bones in your foot, where you get to those little toesies, we call these your tarsals. These same names are used in the insect leg. And so if you take a look at an insect leg, there will be one little kind of connector to the body. I'm going to switch colors. One little connector to the body, and that's called the coxa. Now that in some things like wasps is big, right? A lot of others, it's sort of flattened and up against the side of the body, right? The coxa is, wait, hold on a second. I'm going to bring up for you. Well, one moment. I'm going across the room. I'm getting something off of. Sorry for the slight delay here. Put that. Never mind. So on a wasp, I'm going to draw a big coxa sticking out down here. These are not big on most insects, but on a wasp, especially the back one, you get these things that really stick down significantly. The next little piece is what's called the trochanter. And it is a little thing. And if you forget that, that's okay. Because it's only on something like a wasp where you will see these little things kind of sticking out below the body. On most of the insects that you draw, this part here is hidden by the insect's body, especially when you're looking at the top view, right? So then we have the femur, and this can be a large piece. It can be muscular, so there are muscles inside of it. And that's that, say on a grasshopper, that's that big thing that is sticking up. You have that big femur sticking up. And instead of two bones, the insect from there has one. It's not a bone, it's a tube. So they've got their skeletal structure on the outside. The tibias often will have a really kind of cool features on them. Look for, on some things, you'll see little spikes sticking out on the back side of it. That's kind of a cool little decoration. Very often on the very bottom of it, there is one or more spines that you'll see here. And then we have the tarsals. So the tarsals on these are the things, remember there's 4 or 5 as looking on the foot of the insect. Essentially you have this little part out here. You first look at it, you think it's one segment. You get closer to it, you realize this is multiple segments. Very often the first ones are a little bit longer than the further ones. And if you've got enough magnification to observe these, count them. Often the one at the end, these will then turn into be a little pad and one last one sticking out with little hooks on the end called our tarsal claws. So this pattern is typical for insect legs. And it helps you, it helps us to remember, if you forget this part, that's fine. Just think of this as your thigh, your calf, and your foot, all right? On most insects, this part being hidden, that's what you see sticking out the bottom. Here on the side view of the wasp, let's put in a femur.
Oh, Jack, could you please,
Whoops.
thank you.
Let's put in a tibia. And then let's put in a tarsus. Sometimes the tarsus is really long. On this one, it's so far away that I can't really see those individual segments, but I can see there's my little tarsus. And then this one here, I'm going to do the same thing, but this is pointing up towards me, so I'm not going to, it's going to be kind of foreshortened towards me. And this one here is going to come forward and be a little bit shorter.
Oh, Jack, if we have time, that really big, lovely drawing of the insect leg, folks were wondering if you wouldn't mind labeling that one as well.
Oh, sure. Let's do that. Now, because I am doing, these have the same names and I'm color coding them, it would be easy to assume that this means that there is some structural evolutionary similarity between these. There isn't. It's just that scientists have given these parts the same names. So just because we're seeing these things, here's my trochanter. Here is my femur. Let's draw the femur in here. They don't have a kneecap. Here is my tibia. Here's my tibia. Remember, there's 2 bones, tibia and fibula, in me. And my tarsals, go back to red. All right. So those are my parts of my insect leg. Now, here's where people kind of get off the rails with this. These parts attach to the thorax, as I can plainly see here. Let's actually take a look right now at let's take a look at a wasp. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the website iNaturalist. This is an incredible resource for all of us naturalists. iNaturalist, if you take a photograph of something and you can't identify it, you put it in here, a community of naturalists is going to help you out. Oh, look at this beautiful photograph right there. C. Hutton, thank you for taking this photograph. But let's look at this. So there's our head. We've got the mouth parts, the eyes, the little antenna sticking up on it. Oh, that's so cool. Department of Transportation. We have the legs and the wings attaching to this part of the body. And take a look at that leg sticking down. There's that coxa, the small trochanter. You have the femur going up. You have the tibia going down. And you can see this one has a single spike on the bottom of that tibia. It's a really good place to look for spikes and ornamentation. And then look at these tarsal segments. Look at the first one is long, then they're short, and the last one has those two little hooks on the end. Isn't that cool? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments on that. So there are those segments on the leg. Those are all the parts of the leg. The problem is when we look at an insect from the top, let's take a look at you. Hi. Right? We take a look at this insect from the top. What do we see? We see that we have the part of the femur sticking out, and then the tibia going down and the tarsals there on the bottom. Look at that last tarsal segment with those two little pads sticking out on either side of that central thing that has the claws on it. Those little end of your little toesies are so cute. So here we're not seeing all those segments in the leg, but here's also the really weird thing, and this is what messes up a lot of people's drawings of insects, is that if we've studied and understand that so we understand that the legs are attaching to the thorax, I go like, oh, my head is hidden in that picture. Then I see that big thorax. Avea, can you see my little arrow, my little cursor arrow wiggling around?
No.
No, okay. So I was using that as a pointer, but I realized like, you may not be seeing this. All right, but look at that. Notice how that first leg appears from the connection between the thorax and those wing covers. And then the other two appear to be sticking out of the abdomen. What's going on like that? The problem is what a lot of people will do is they will draw the legs. They'll draw the legs like this, right? I have my first leg coming out here. My next one comes out here. And my next one comes out here because they all have to attach to my thorax, right? But what really goes on is that underneath this little plate here, on the underside, this thing's thorax continues down in a projection on the underside of the abdomen. So my first leg coming out here My next leg is attaching to that. And it's coming out here. My other leg is attaching to that, and it's coming out here, giving you the effect that these legs are coming out of the abdomen, but we've really got it in a projection of the thorax down there. So to get those legs in the right position, the best thing to do is look at the insect and see what it's doing. Right? So we want to keep coming back to that insect. And then what I will do is I will make a light wireframe drawing. And put my details on top of that. If your insect is moving around too much for you to really be able to observe, then what I suggest you do is look at it in terms of parts. Right, so here are some sketches of a wasp. This one I did put in a jar and let it go outside when I was done. But this little critter kept zipping all around and it was hard to draw. And so what I did is my brain could only keep a little bit of this information in it at one time. And so what I did is I would draw part of the head or part of the thorax. And I would put that down. I had a hard time in my brain stitching those all together. And so I just kept them as separate little parts. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by all this detail on your thing, just get one part and one part and one part and one part, and you've still learned a ton about that little wasp.
Hey,
Here's,
Jack,
yes.
this is Beth. Hi, nice to see you. Thank you
Oh,
for
hey
this
there.
wonderful class. Hi. We are at the halfway point. So if you
Oh.
want to finish, I know, if you want to finish this discussion of that leg you were going to do, and then perhaps we could have a quick bug dance party. And while we're having that dance party for our break, lots of folks are wondering about your shirt.
Oh, so the backstory on this shirt.
So maybe you can switch back to your main camera and we can have a little break and you can talk about your shirt.
Okay, so yeah, let's take a little break. When we come back, we're going to be using this worksheet. I know you're thinking like, but oh, it's so faded. Mine didn't come out right. Mine's the same way. It's that way on purpose, and I'll show you why. But if you don't have this yet, maybe we can put a link to it in the chat. And we'll do something with that. The backstory of this shirt. So at this point, we can get up, we can start kind of moving around. My family went to Greece together, and we our luggage got diverted to Belgrade, and we were starting to smell bad. And it would take a while for our luggage to get to us. And it was possible that our luggage wouldn't get to us. And so while that whole process was going on, eventually we decided like we need to get a few things. So I usually don't go into stores and buy things. But here I wanted to get some underwear, got some underwear. And I was thinking like, I really don't want to get a shirt. But then I saw this one hanging on the shelf, and it was in the discount rack. For some reason, doesn't quite fit me. It's a little bit large, but you know what? I like it. So it also has this, for me, this wonderful memory of kind of our family was like trying to scramble to kind of get things together. Eventually our luggage came home. So I had all my original luggage and this shirt. So it was really a blessing that our luggage got lost. And one of the results of that was this bug shirt. What was the store? I don't know. The store was a chain that also is here. It's like 2 letters in its name, like M&M or C and I.
We have one of the attendees saying H&M.
H&M, that's it. There was an M in it. And so they had this shirt with bugs on it. So what's not to like about that? But usually the Goodwill, that's the best place to try to find cool things like that. So go to the restroom. When we come back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop into not instead of kind of like the theoretical bug, we're going to look at up close at a few drawings of insects, and we are going to be making colored painted illustrations. So if you've got some colored pencils or if you've got some watercolors, you're going to want those. Underneath my desk here, I have a little hairdryer that I'm going to use for part of the demonstrations on watercolor, just to make that part go more quickly. If you've got something like that around your house, go grab it, plug it in. Otherwise, we will, you can just wait, why not? It'll be okay.
Our break is nearly over, so any more wiggles you need to do with your hands? Do you need to use the bathroom?
You might.
You might.
Anybody out there?
Okay, 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes.
Shake out your bug fingers.
You know what this is?
Butter? Why did you bring butter to a bug class?
It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. Why are you bringing butter to a bug class? What's this? What's it doing?
Constantly moving?
Constantly moving. Oh, that's true. They do that.
Ooh, someone said butterfly. That's good.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Oh, I know that was really working for it, but it makes me happy. Somebody found the link to the shirt.
Yes, we did.
Oh, check that out. Yeah, if there's any larger person out there with broader shoulders than mine, and you really like this, and you get one that's a little bit smaller, we can trade, and then we'll both have one that really fits. But in the meantime, right? Should we start?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what I want to do is now let's just let's full on like get all illustratory. And what I want to do is I'm going to be showing you some tricks and techniques that illustrators use to render things that will make it look buggy. We're going to try to get the lines to work for us. We're going to try to get the textures to work for us. And we're going to do this with a number of different media. You don't have to master them all. I'm not a master of them all. But there'll be some people who will be leaning more in one area than another. But let's say you do like playing with lines. Lines are great. We're going to ink a drawing. And what I mean by this is I'm going to go over that light drawing on this page. When I'm doing an illustration, I'll often kind of lightly kind of draw the thing, and then I go over that either with a harder pencil line or with ink, and then I can color that in, essentially making myself a coloring book. We're going to do that here. But when I first thought of how you do this, you just like, oh, trace over the lines. No. Because how you use your lines is going to be really important. We are going to get 2 things. That's right. It's line variation and snodgrassing. We're going to snodgrass together. That's right. You ready to snodgrass? Come snodgrass with me. Let's take a look. So here is this this drawing. It is a drawing of not this lovely little critter. It is a drawing of the giraffe weevil. Look at this thing. Look at this. All right. This is this really cool weevil, and its head is just outstanding. So when you're looking at an insect, you're thinking to yourself, like, what is up with this thing? What is the function of this place. So a very useful thing to do is to start trying to wonder widely about how the structures of something work. Why does it help you to have that feature? Right. So this is our target beastie. And we've got a sketch of it. But what I want to do is work with you on how I'd go about inking this. And this is something that you can apply to everything. A variable line is going to really help your insect drawings. So a variable line is a line that in some places is thin, in some places is thick, and in some places is thin. So you see how that line has different thicknesses. This is a Tombow pen, the Fudenus, it's a Tombow pen. It's a Tombow brush pen. It's black. It is, these are available on my website. You'll also be able to find them other places. If you've got something like this where you can make a pressure variable line, grab that. If not, what we can do is you can use just a regular pen. What is this one? This is just a little roller ball pen, and you see it makes a line of a consistent weight. The thinner your pen is, the better. So if you have, that is, I took it out, I put it on my table, but where did I put it on the table? I've got a really skinny black pen. And it's decided to wander off. That rascal. If you don't have a pen, you don't like using pens, you can also use a pencil. With pencils, you can get a variable line. You can go lightly, you can go broad, right? So actually, why don't I use a pencil? Because that's something I know that everybody has got, and you'll see that this works well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink this with pencil. As I go around this, I want my line in some places to be lighter, in some places to be darker. A few places that people will put heavier lines are on the underside of something to kind of represent a shadow. Right? So if I'm doing this in a pen, right, I could go light line, heavier line, kind of get out into light line. This side up here, I'm going to generally use a lighter line on this. And the reason I'm going to use a lighter line up there, see, it's going to look the same with, is that that's the side that the sunlight's on. So I want to let the sunshine in. Here I used a heavier line because I wanted this little structure of the side of the mouth parts to stand out relative to these things. If there's part of the insect that is closer to you, I tend to do that part also heavier. So here on this antenna, I might give this side heavy line work. And the part on the other side, we put a little bit of variation. So maybe a sunlight side here that is going to be lighter and a darker side over here where the shadow is. That line variation throughout the drawing just makes it a little bit more lively. Light line over here. As I go out on this antenna here, I'm going to do the whole thing lightly.
Oh, Jack, could you,
Oops.
there we go. Thank you.
Zoom down more. Right, so as I go out here, I'm just going to keep it light. And that way, when you look at those two antennae, this one will feel closer because it's stronger line work than that one that is out there. What about here? I can help with people sort of think that they're seeing overlap. this structure is on top of this one. And this one is further in the background. So that I'm going to put a heavier line on the underside here. And minor lines like
Sorry, we
this little
gotta.
suture, oopsie, minor lines like this little suture here, I'm going to keep that lighter on something that's more of a major feature that gets bigger. Look at this on this side here, side towards us. I'm going to give that a heavier line over there. So there's this line variation throughout the whole thing. It makes your drawing much more interesting. There's a few little wrinkles in this. These structures here. This side is close to me. And now you may be wondering, what's up with snodgrassing? Here, now you'd be tempted just to draw a hard line all the way down between these two.
Sorry, Jack.
Whoops. Lucky you're here with me. Instead of drawing a hard line all the way here, I'm going to get lighter variation. So with your line, you can also dot it out. See that can be part of your variable line. Oh, it just looks. Sometimes on surfaces that are more of an important structure, like this is the edge of this wing cover, I'm going to give that a heavier line so that these little lines here feel like more of an afterthought, or there's a line hierarchy. Oh, but snodgrassing. What is this snodgrassing and why will it change my life? Well, I'm glad you asked. Snodgrassing is what's a really great thing to do at these sort of line intersections where two lines meet like that. And what it is you're thinking like in these structures, sort of where might the shade appear? And it's often you just sort of are making a little kind of a little dark triangle where you're going to darken that little. So let's say I have like these two lines that are coming together here. That's a place that needs some snodgrassing. I'm going to snodgrass that in right there. I have a line coming here, another line coming here. I'm going to snodgrass right in there. So you kind of get these little kind of divots of darkness right where those things connect. And it just gives a little bit more dimension to those features. It was, surprise, surprise, named after a person named Snodgrass. It's an illustrator who first started doing this, and everybody said like, "Oh, dude, Snodgrass! Look at this! I'm gonna do that light. This, whoops! I keep going off the screen." So here's this little leg. I'm gonna do this far leg lightly. And then this one a little bit strong, more strong. And what that does, now that this is you know, maybe make that a little bit lighter there to let some light into that leg. Yeah, that's better.
Was Snodgrass perhaps Robert Evans Snodgrass? Is that
I,
the?
if somebody could look that up for us.
I'm looking at it now. I just put a link in the chat, and this is a man who was an entomologist at Stanford,
Ah,
and he has some really cool insect illustrations. I was wondering if that is the
I'll bet that's him.
person. Okay.
So go Bob. Bob Snodgrass. Um, It's a spot that deserves a snod. If you put too many of the little snodgrass blobs in, it starts to feel like pepper being sprinkled over the whole page, and that doesn't help you. But a little bit of tasteful snodgrassing, and it can make places where lines come together just a lot more nuanced and interesting.
Could you lower
There's a little snod. Oops, I've just put in a snodgrass here. I had a line going up like this, another line coming out of that. I just put in a little bit of snod right there.
Sorry,
Be the
could you
snod you
lower?
want to see in the world. Now
Sorry.
these legs on the far side, I'm going to do those lightly, right? Or if you're doing this with, say, micron pens, you just use a smaller nib size for the ones you want to be lighter. Then you have to keep changing pens. You notice how when I hit that dark, this starts to pop forward. See, that's why we want to think about where we're doing this. Keep this foot light, and then it stays in the background. So now I've got this little beetle, and we're going to paint it and texturize this little thing. And what I'm going to do is on top of well, I know I keep moving it up here because it's falling off the edge of my paper. What if I tilt this? Yes, that'll work. All right. I think I will fall off the page less now. So I am going to paint and texturize this thing. First, let's take a look at how these beetles look. There's a black part and a red part, so the colors are easy. But let's take a look here. No, let's go back. I'll take a look there. Yep, so on this one, see that little shine on that black part? We're not seeing a lot of detail in these parts here. But there's a nice little shine on that black part. And then those are reflective surfaces. This is useful to us. So we're going to have some little brown in the tips out here on the antenna, black body. There are reflections, and then red here, and we're going to get those reflections on it. Let's make this look like a really shiny black and red beetle together. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's go back here. And insect. Good, there's my zoom screen. I lost my zoom screen for a moment. Now, I'm going to, the approach which I like to take is to use colored pencil and watercolor together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a base coat of watercolor, not worrying about texture. And then I'm going to come in with the colored pencils and create the gloss, the shine, and the texture on top of that. And so using those two methods together, I find very, very helpful. I'm going to back out one notch here so we can sort of see this as it goes. I am going to start by putting in a sort of a shade of black over all the black parts on this. And I'm using a brush pen here. And I like the brush pens. They keep a nice little sharp tip. What I like to do is mix up some paint on my palette and then test it off on the side of my paper. I'm looking at how sharp is my tip. Do I have too much water there? If you have a big drop of water on the end of your brush and you touch it down and it makes a big glob, then you go like, oh, I'm sad. I'm sorry that that is on the middle of my giraffe beetle. This is a kind of a weevil. And I'm first going to color in all the places where I want there to be sort of my biggest shadow. And I'm not going all the way to the edge because I'm leaving what illustrators call a little bit of reflected light in those places. I'm mapping in, here is my biggest shadow. Very often people in watercolor will tell you to start with your lightest and go darker. Here I'm intentionally doing the opposite of that. I'm intentionally starting with my darkest and then I'm going lighter. And the reason that I'm doing that is this helps me think of these dark areas as shapes. As I am painting along here, my brush is slowly running out of black paint. So the darkness of the black in it is now less than it originally was when I started up there on the neck. So that means when I then go over here on the far side, my shadows, my dark parts, are going to be not quite as dark. I'm imagining that the light is coming from the far side of the picture here. Should have done that eye earlier. I'm just thinking about where would the light hit and where would it not. Now, I'm going to let I can let that dry. If there are big puddles of paint on here, that can make things confusing for me. So instead, I'm going to dry it off. Another advantage of this is that if my hand then touches part of this, I'm not going to smear paint with part of my hand. Now, let's check how dark the black paint is in my brush. That's sort of a medium shade of black, and notice it's not as black as this. So without even having to change my brush, I can now come in here and paint in those other areas. And that shadow shows through. And here I'm covering everything up. If I wanted to, now it's getting a little bit too pale. Actually, let's do these back legs. These back legs before I add a little more dark into my brush. Those shadows that still show up in it. Those nice, crisp little shapes. I think I need a little bit more black in here. Some artists really don't like to use black paint. Oh, I wish I did that one with the lighter. I'll do that leg last. because I'm hoping that this will, black on here will get lighter as I work down the body here on all these other legs. By making these back legs lighter, that's a trick called using atmospheric perspective. If you look at distant mountains, they're more pale than the ones that are closer to you. When you're looking at an insect, you don't see that, but it's a visual trick. I can make people think that something is further away because because my get a little bit of brown paint for these sections up here. There I go. Now this part of this shadow seems a little bit too intense for me. I'm going to get a medium shade of gray. You don't need 50. And why would you want? Oh no, that's too dark. So get rid of some of my paint. Brush that off. What about now? Yeah, okay. And you can still see some of the edges between these, and that's okay. All right. There's some black legs. This looks a little bit too blotchy in here. Let's smooth that in a little bit. I don't want that to be distracting. If I get a damp, clear brush, I can just smooth those edges around. Great. Now, I'm going to dry it again. That's dry enough. And now the fun part is this red thing. To draw the red part on the back there, those beetle wing covers, technically those are known as elytra. The wing covers of beetles are elytra. There are special names for all the different parts of beetles. And if my light is coming from this side, I want to think of where the shadow is catching. And for the color in that, let's just take a look at some of the shadow areas of some of these real beetles. Again, I'm going back to iNaturalist here, and which is this wonderful, wonderful website that you can use to, all right, there's nice reflections in those. I'm seeing red in some of these shadow areas, and then the shadow areas, all shadow areas. Oh, you guys are so cute. Let's drop out here. Let's go for
Jack, just letting you know, it is your half an hour time check that we have half an hour left.
half an hour time check. Great. All right, let's look at this. All right, so there's sort of a dollar maroon color in here. I'm going to leave part up here in the light, and then the shadow is kind of hooking around this side, getting more intense towards the base. All right, that helps me. Document camera, and here we are. So what I'm going to do is I have I have a shadow color that I've mixed up here. It's sort of a purple gray color. And I like to put my shadow in first. And what I'm going to do is just sort of think of, in this zone here, where's my shadow going to be? That seems a little bit too in your face. So I'm going to lighten that by wiping part of my shadow color off on my little cloth here. And this area here, shadow is going to hook around the back here. Oh, I should have left a little reflected light in there, shouldn't I? Ah. So if you ever kind of do something, then later on you wish that I didn't, just notice it so that the next time you do a drawing, you might be able to catch that. Get some on this side where that, sort of think of what are the contours and textures of this shape. And then I let it dry.
That is the quietest blow dryer ever.
It's just a bad microphone. Now let's go back here. Look at this. Look at this. We're gonna say, all right, little beetle friend, what are the colors? What color of red? So we're seeing some red, we're seeing some pinks in these shadow areas. This one here in bright light. Oh, it's really a brilliant red. It's really, this is a race car. Oh, that's gorgeous. That's just gorgeous. But a little bit more orangey red, and then to a deeper red back here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, without worrying about highlights, without worrying about shadows, I'm going to drop those onto my drawing. I already have my shadows. So now all I have to think of is red and orangey red. And I'm going to start with my orangey red by putting some yellow into this area. Then when the red is on top of that, it will be more, some of that yellow might show through. Now I'm going to grab some red paint. I'm using a little bit of Pyrrole red with a little bit of quinacridone magenta in it because I can't help myself but use quinacridone magenta. I'm going to see what color red I have. That seems to be good. I'm going to dilute it a little bit to make it a little bit more transparent because I want my yellow to show through. And now I'm just going to go for it. And I'm hoping that some of my yellow shows through. And I hope that my shadows show through. So look at that. So I've got a little bit of that orange glow in the top there. And I have some nice red in the bottom. So that allows that orange to kind of come through. If I want more of that orange to come through, because this, I'll bet if I lightly stroke here with a clean brush, I can pick up some of the red. And it's more the yellow will stay there. And now I'm going to dry it again. For this next step, I really want to get good and dry. For this next step, the paper really, really, really has to be dry, or this will not work. What I'm going to be doing is drawing with colored pencil on top of this. And I am, so if you are drawing with colored pencil on paper that is a little bit damp, your pencil will just push into that damp paper and groove the paper and not leave pencil behind. But if it's nice and dry, then it will go. So let me bounce back to that little beetle again, and let's look at things that sunlight does on the black part. So we're just going to focus on the black part. And let's get a beetle that is nicely in the light here. And we want, oh, that will work. All right. So I'm seeing those pale highlights. They're making lines along the surface where the rounded form is turning. And let's look at this lovely one here. I'm so jealous of this person getting to the little giraffe beetle to walk around on them. I want a giraffe beetle friend. All right, I can work with this. Now look at that. So now look at the light there, the highlights, the white part in the black. That's the sunlight hitting it. Your goal is to be the sunlight. Be the light you want to see in this world. Right? And go. So I am. And I can make little sort of dot. Sometimes if it's smooth, I'll have a little harder line. There's things that stick up in here, and those get their own little kind of ridges of light. The eyes might, any sort of place where there's a rounded surface, it's going to pick up its own little highlight. And there's some texture in here that sometimes catches some of the lines. There's a big piece that wraps around here. And then some of these little pieces here might just catch a little bit of light. If I want really crisp, bright light, that's where a gel pen comes in. So if on a leg, say there might be some little highlights in there. On some of these little tarsal segments, they might get their own little highlights. And I can just kind of come and go whoop, whoop, whoop. It helps to make sound effects. As I'm going to put some of that into here, but if I start drawing with lines, it's going to look funky. So instead, I'm going to use stippling, which is where you kind of put little dots of light down. So I'm going to stipple some gel pen into this, just suggesting a little bit of texture. And then look at this. This is a blue pencil. This is a Col-Erase non-photo blue pencil. I could use some other blue pencil, but this one, it just gives you a little ghosting. It's a very pale pencil. It doesn't really do much in a drawing, but I can use it in some of these reflected light areas just to bring a little bit of a hint of blue into there, into some of my reflections. And that gives a really cool effect. Again, this won't work on damp paper. Just a little bit of a ziggle of,
Is that the technical term, ziggle?
oh yes, it's actually named after Ernest Ziggle, who was a specialist in drawing tardigrades. And so ziggling is when you take a non-photo blue pencil and you add those little dots in there. If you're making more of sort of a broad area of color, that was really perfected by Rebecca Zunkel. So those are what's referred to as Zunkel. Or not. But now look at that, those lights in the darks. They're like, oh, let's get a little bit more, let's get some Zunkel into this area. It doesn't really show up on your screen. I'm getting a little bit of isn't that fun? It's like all sparkly, but look at that dull gujunk of the elytra there. Oh, what if we added some light to some elytra? Wouldn't that be nice? Let's go there now.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So let's now look at what does light do on the elytra. And here are our friends again. And who's got some good light on their elytra? How about, see, if something's taken on a really kind of cloudy day or in the shade, there's no really crisp highlights in here. So that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, I want this to feel bright, shiny. I'm so shiny. Oh, look at me. I'm a giraffe weevil. Oh, look at that. Okay, so low, whoa. So check it out. There's these little kind of red punctations in the lines on the back, and then some of these central areas where the form is curving. Right. So if you're the light source and I'm a big round thing here, you're going to get a reflection on that there's be some point on that curve that will get the angle of the light bouncing back to you. So very often where there's a curve somewhere in there, not the whole thing, you're going to have this light bouncing back to you, and can be like knocking yourself out with like, well, the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. So therefore or you could look at the beetle and go like, where's your reflection popping in here? And then you get to put that in. Oh, no, we want these guys, right? Like, so there's where that is coming in. Let's look at just a couple more sources and use that as our inspiration for creating this dance of sunlight. Oh, look at this. Look at this. That far elytra, there's a little white curve in there, and then we're getting a little bit of that on this close side. I like that. I like that. Who else? Where else do we want to go? It's giraffe beetles with bright light. Oh, you're nice. Look at you. Okay. Okay. Now, this next part, I've got a warning for you. Oh, look at the thickness of your neck. You've got totally different proportions than the other ones. Look at you. What are you up to? What are you doing? What are you doing? Huh. There's more to giraffe weevils than I thought. All right. Now, back here, let's put those in.
Jack, just wanted to let you know it's about 12 minutes till the end of class. So folks are popping lots of questions into the chat, and Eve and I are answering them as we can, but we will just pop in and interrupt you if we have some more to ask during the last few minutes of class. Does that sound good?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Great.
it is. Right, so I want there to be a little, I want to be on the screen. I want a little bit of white happening here. And I am going to, but then there's going to be, what have we put? Now, I want to have a few places a little bit higher contrast. Now, this is fun, so the warning is don't overdo it. And I'm going to have a few places with a little bit brighter, so I'm going to put in some stipple with this. And another thing you can do is if you like doing stuff with gouache paint, this gives you much more of kind of a harsh effect. But never put red in your white. But look at this. You can, with gouache paint, I'm going to kind of bounce my brush along and see how that makes it's much more. Oh, there's a bright highlight. And I have to stop before I overdo the whole thing, because there's a tendency just to keep going, and then there's highlight everywhere, just a little bit of highlight. I'm also going to bring in my favorite little pencil here, add some blue. That doesn't really show up on that screen. What if I use a Prismacolor, another Prismacolor pencil here that might just make that show up on our computer screen a little bit more. Color into the reflected lights. And the final thing I would do to kind of tie the whole thing in a bow is to go over some of the edges, especially on things like the legs here, and just reinforce some of the crisp line work. And see how this looks like a wobbly edge? See that leg has a let's zoom down on it. Zoom. This leg has more of a wobbly edge. If I come along here and I just clean up that edge, that looks up there. I'm going to use my gel pen as an eraser to get rid of some of the wobbles around it. Here's another example. This leg here is looking a bit clunky. So I'm just going to clean up some of those edges, clean up some of these tarsal segments. And I can use the gel pen also to help with that. How many seconds left?
You have 8 whole minutes.
8? Right. So this gives us aren't these things fun? You just want it's like a robot. It's like all this cool stuff in your face. I just want to show you a handful of other little ideas that can also just add a ton of fun to your page. One is if you have a little drawing of some critter on your page, and let's say it's green. Something that's a fun way of showing life size is just to draw a little mini version of what you're doing life size. So let's say that's a little life size beetle or a bug, true bug. It's a stink bug. Don't eat it. It'll be sad. And imagine that the light in this drawing is coming from this side. A really fun thing to do is just to add a little shadow on the other side of the critter. And then it looks like they're walking around on your page. And if there's a leg, you can have the shadow of that leg come out. Where's the shadow of that leg going to be? Here's the shadow of that antenna. And there's the shadow of that foot. So you can just put in a little shadow with your friends, and then it looks like they're crawling around on your page, right? How much fun is that, right? You want people to kind of try to brush it off your page. Here's another thing. What about this butterfly here? So if you want to get your butterfly, to have fun with butterflies, I want to point out a little subtle thing about butterflies and how they hold their wings. Notice that this butterfly's wings are about in line with its head. You will often see butterflies drawn this way. Like here's the center of your butterfly, and you have a wing up like this, and a wing down here, and a wing down here. This X-wing position you find in entomological collections after somebody has killed a butterfly, put a pin in its back, and spread these wings so that you get to see this full spread of the wings. You see all the wing detail. That's useful because what goes on with these wings, there's very often a big cell here with smaller hair sticking off of it. This pattern, the pattern of veins, helps you identify things. But if you draw them in this spread eagle position, then you're drawing a dead bug. What I suggest you do is when you're drawing your insects, your butterflies, is just to start with a little triangle position and build here's your insect's body, and build as your sort of general model, build the butterfly within that triangle behind that line there. Sometimes you will see butterflies that will slightly bring their wings a little bit more forward, like this one is, but generally you're kind of not wanting to kind of have them up in this position. Once you start drawing butterflies, you're getting into the details. Focus while the butterfly is in front of you on the wing on one side. After the butterfly goes away, you can focus on the other side. Another thing that's really fun to do is to draw butterflies in the positions that you actually see them, and they'll sometimes have their wings slightly rocked up. And a great way to prepare yourself for that is to get a pair of scissors and cut this butterfly out. Essentially what you're making is a little butterfly model like this one. So here's a butterfly model that I made from one of these. And then what you can do is you fold it, and then you can sit around, just slip this into your journal. The next time you're at a bus stop, pull this out, hold it at an angle. And what you're doing is you're thinking about the foreshortening in these wings. When this wing is pointed towards you, it looks shorter. And so if you, here I've got this in a little gripper there. And then what you're doing is you're getting yourself to say, I am seeing this first wing in a shape like that. I've got my second wing doing something like that. And you're helping yourself think about this very complicated foreshortening that's going on. The shape that I see of this hind wing is different than the shape I see of this hind wing. So, but having a little model like this really helps me be able to draw them in the positions that I see them. Also, you know, different butterflies do have different shapes of wings, but if you've got this, something like this just tucked into the back of your journal, and you want to just sort of, you know, the butterfly was there and you focused on that wing, then this just helps you kind of go like, oh, all right, you know, there is, or there is, that's a, I can now draw this butterfly more convincingly in the position that I see them. So I really recommend a little paper model for this. Final time check. Do I have 2 minutes?
It is 12 o'clock exactly, but
Oh!
and if folks need to leave, that's okay. I'm sure many people would be fine with you going over by a few minutes.
All right. So for folks who have to leave, thank you for being here. The insects they're beautiful. They're around us all the time. The more that we start to play with them, the more our fear of insects turns into curiosity. And you're going to, you can find yourself drawing these things and being pulled into it. We can change our relationship. There's sort of a kind of a low brainstem thing that we have to things with a lot of legs and snakes, right? Often people will see these shapes and there's part of our low brainstem that kind of says, freak out, danger, warning. And, but we can replace that with curiosity. And what I want to encourage you to do is to maybe add a little jar for holding an insect in, or some close focus binoculars, or to take advantage of the dead insect on the windowsill and see what you can learn from it. Anytime you find one of these things, it's a real resource. And perhaps to close, I'm just going to show you.
Jack, also, when we have a moment, folks were wondering if you could name the other insects on your sheet so that way they can look them up and practice with them.
Sure. So we've got the giraffe beetle. The one to the left of the giraffe beetle, kind of coming forward at a 3/4 view angle, is a blue milkweed beetle. Down below that is a stink bug. You could pick any type of stink bug. There's a ladybird beetle down at the very bottom of the page, and a dragonfly on the right. And those are all fun ones to play with. The giraffe weevil. Weevils are kinds of beetles. So if I'm saying giraffe beetle, giraffe weevil is even more specific. So the best name for that is giraffe weevil.
And I think we were wondering, what kind of butterfly is that? Is that one of the Lycaenidae?
I am not sure. I don't remember what I used as my model. But yeah, different groups of butterflies have slightly different vein patterns. You typically are going to see this one big cell with things radiating out from the edge of it, but the exact number of those in their arrangement is different in different groups of butterflies. And I don't know which one is. That's an entomologist question. That's good. That's good. I like it. Let me just end with a couple other nature journal pages just to sort of say like, oh yeah, this is fun. Critters are around. And document camera, come
While
on.
you're getting that set up, I just want to remind people that we will have another class on May 18th, Saturday, May 18th. The topic is still to be determined. So we'll be sending you a survey. Everyone who came to this class will be emailing you the recording and also a survey and some of the helpful links that we share during class. So we'd love to hear from you what you'd like Jack to teach next. We also wanted to remind you this is a fundraiser, and if you haven't had a chance to make a donation, or if you were so jazzed with class and want to make a bonus donation, please feel free to do that at wildwonder.org/donate, and I will put that link in the chat as well.
And then what we do with your donation is we turn around and we use that to invest in a non-ad free, secure, you don't sign away the rights to your illustrations when you share them on Facebook sort of environment for all of us to have even richer, deeper conversations and to connect with each other, to connect with other teachers, and to have a nature journaling community. I think it's gonna be really, really, really fun. And I think we'll get to know each other a lot better in a safe place.
Yes, a new private online community for nature journalers, which we hope to debut. We will be debuting later this year.
So look at this. You go outside your door, there are these two moths mating on a little right beside your door. And so this is the moths mating. This is details of their of the antenna. This is details of the wing. This is showing myself and my two daughters sitting by the side of the door drawing this moth in our pajamas. Whatever is significant, anytime, especially when you find a big insect, take advantage of it. It's big. You don't need magnification. Those are big insects. Let's look at some other fun insects. Here's behavior. Now this is not a pretty picture. This is showing something really interesting. This was at the last Montana nature journaling retreat. This year they're going to Yellowstone, and check out Valerie Bayer's group, the Montana nature journaling group. They're having an incredible adventure. On the last one that we did, we got out in the middle of this mayfly hatch where the mayflies would land on you. Then they'd start to tuck their wings in. See these little wings tucking in? Oh, my wings, they're coming in. And then the wings go flat against the body. And over the course of 2 minutes, and then all of a sudden, these white wings would pop out and it would crawl out of the old skin, leave it behind, and go flying away. So that the mayflies do this really cool thing where after most flying insects, there's a molt, and then they're the flying insect. But the mayflies, there's 2 molts of the flying stage. Oh, look at this. Here is one of the shed skins on my journal, right? So this is looking at this massive mayfly hatch and kind of following that. I mean, there's like insect stuff happens. And if you find a, this is, let's zoom back. Whoop. Hi, more. This is looking at there were these weird globs, these yellow globs on pine needles, and I didn't know what they were. They were near spiders, but there seemed to be some sort of exoskeleton parts in them. This was a total mystery to me. So this was looking at some kind of arthropod things that I didn't know, that I didn't understand. And this got me to look a little bit closer at those. Again, anytime you find a big insect, this beetle was this big. Take advantage of it. This is from Greece. This was a beetle in Greece. And here, because it was a dead beetle in Greece, I was more looking at structure. So what are the structure of these big jaws? Wondering like how forceful is that bite? looking at on the underside of it. I could turn this thing over and then look at how the legs kind of connected on the underside. And anytime you get an opportunity to see some big insect, take advantage of that. Damselflies through binoculars. Mating damselflies through binoculars. And again, look at what are the postures that they take. So if I can't get the details of like all their little body segments, I can't see those. I can get the postures that they take as the female here is laying eggs in the water. Lastly, look at this one. So here's a grasshopper that was this big. This is life-size grasshopper. But what I really kind of got into, it was alive. And what I started doing is I was looking at its eye. And you see the little black dot in that eye? That was this holographic little thing. So as I would move the eye around, the apparent position of that black dot would change. When I'm looking at it from below, I would see it here. When I'm looking at it from more above, I would see it here. Whoa. So there are these little, look at it from the front, and that little black dot moves around. So like, what's going on with that little holographic dot? Look for the things that you don't understand. And the world is going to kind of come out and play with you as we reduce our fear, replace that with curiosity, and step forward into this world with wonder and joy and a willingness to share that with other people, a willingness to protect these wild species. Right now, insect populations all over the globe are in decline. Insect populations are doing that. It's easy, we have more data on the birds, but the same thing's happening with the insects. I remember when I was a kid, you drive across the Central Valley of California and the windshield of my parents' car would be covered with so many insects, you'd have to stop several times in every gas station and try to clear it off. Not anymore. So something's going on. And if we're not paying attention, we're missing some clues. We have an ability to make incredible changes on this planet. If we pay attention, we can we can make good decisions to try to use science to help us understand what's happening. And because we care about these things, put pressure on the people who are leading our countries to take action to protect these species. If we think of bugs as just a nuisance, there's no motivation to do that. But once we start looking carefully, these little wonderful things with holograms in their eyes that share this planet with us, how lucky we are to be able to spend time with these marvelous creatures. And let's also step up and do what we can to protect them so that our natural systems will be able to maintain their integrity, and we'll have these wonderful creatures to share this planet with. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your participation in this, and I hope you have a great time getting buggy.
Thank you so much, Jack, for sharing all of your wisdom and experience and joy, and also silly made-up words and terrible butter puns with props. We just wanted to remind folks to please share your drawings and class notes with us through posting on socials at Wild Wonder Foundation. You can tag us. And also, we just want to say again, thank you so much for joining us. We will email you a link to the recording in about 1 week, and we'll also include some of the key things that were shared in the chat as well. Lots of people shared lots of fun things there. And we will be sending you a survey as well. Our next class will be Saturday, May 18th, and we will see you then, if not before. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful day or night.